Okay, and we are live. All right, this is Youth Rugby Discussion, folks, where we discuss all things rugby youth focused in North America. We are the Northeast. Though some of us may sit on a board of some sort or another, we do not represent USA Rugby, SRO, in many cases, even our clubs. We do not speak for anybody. Each individual here is free to bring us news, perspective, ideas, whatever. We're basically just hanging out, bunch of folks chatting about, youth rugby, the thing that we really enjoy. All right, so let's introduce ourselves so we can hear voices and attach them to names. So can we start at the very top? And
Hello, my name is Chris Cuddy. I am a rugby dad. My days of playing and repping and coaching are pretty much wound down, but I've got kids across a few different youth clubs in the state right now, and my job is to be their dad.
Mm-hmm. We need rugby dads.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, my name's Navesh. I'm with the Centaurs. I suppose in Boston we started the Centaurs last year. It's a youth club, and I'm also a rugby dad. And I'll pass you on to Craig.
Yes, my name's Craig Weeks. I work with the Mystic River Youth Program. That's all that needs to be said.
and I'm Daniel Mejia. I coach flag for the Rentham Barbarians. And Daryl.
I am Daryl Jackson. I'll be representing with the Centaurs as well. Formerly, I worked at USA Rugby as the Rugby Development Officer for New England.
Hi, this is Shaggy with the South Shore Sharks. I coach and president of the Sharks. I help with Myra as the clerk, and I am going to be wearing socks and sandals for the duration of this COVID infection.
Well done, well done.
And
Uh,
go ahead, Skylar.
I'm Skylar, high school rugby player for the Boston Irish Wolfhounds and complete and total rugby nerd.
Fantastic. Love that. Love that. All right, guys. So, the topic of discussion, we're going to go to news now, but the topic of discussion, just so that everybody knows, we're going to be talking about why don't more senior side clubs have youth teams? What are the benefits? What are the challenges? And all things around that. But right now, let's go ahead and transition to news because, as I understand, we have some things that we do want to be able to discuss and bring up. Darren, you got something for us?
Yeah, we'll try to make it real brief. So USA Rugby, the board and the Congress ratified some new governance bylaws. Right now, it's nothing really that interesting. It's ratifying the minutes of previous minutes, and really what it does is it's moving forward into the bankruptcy process and the reorganization process. So really what kind of came out of this was says moving forward, the four representative sectors of the game, youth and high school, college, senior club, and adult will begin the transitional phase by initiating a selection process for the establishment of leadership in each of the retrospectives. So the thing that I find kind of interesting is the numbers of people that they're going to have as representatives. So they're going to have four representing the international players. So they'll have one for men, one for women 7s, and one for men and one for women 15s. But then they get a lot smaller when it comes to the rest of the rugby community in the United States. So they're only going to have one for senior level men and women, one for college, both men and women, one person representing youth and high school. So there was a whole nother article that kind of talked about why those numbers are not as big as they are, but it just doesn't seem like it's very representative when you consider how big our country is of every single possible club. I mean, it's so like just if you looked at youth and high school, I mean, does that one person represent the needs and the interests of just club rugby, or is it varsity rugby? that one person is going to represent all the boys and all the girls, and you know, California and New York are completely two different markets. And so how does that one person represent all their interests? Same thing for college and adult men's and women's level. So it seems a little vague. You know, I mean, it seems like that committee should be bigger. So it's going to be a little interesting. But you know, right now they're still working through the process, so things could change. Um, so there's that. And then the only other thing that I have is so Argentina backed out of the bidding process for the 2027 or 27 Rugby World Cup. And so there are people that are thinking, hey, this is an opportunity for USA Rugby to put in a bid for the 2027. Now, this is the men's Rugby World Cup. Now, obviously, we're in the process of going through a bankruptcy, so the timing seems incredibly bad. But hypothetically, if USA Rugby, you would have until 2027. You'd have 7 years to get ready for it. But like again, it just seems like that is such a big major tournament that if you screw that up, you'll never get. Not only will you never get one again, but that'll be the biggest embarrassment within the larger international rugby community. So it's unfortunately, I think obviously we're going to probably have to take a pass on it. But I wanted to kind of get everyone else's thoughts on, you know, the bidding process. I mean, what do you think? I mean, should we hopefully get our stuff together and then make a bid, or say no, we're in no position to be able to host a Rugby World Cup?
Chris, you look
The
like
latter, Daryl.
Yeah, that's. I mean, that's kind of a big portion of the financial mess that you know of the numbers that got us into the bankruptcy was you know management of larger events. It'd be good, you know. I can honestly see both sides of this. You know, it'd be a good goal to strive for, but in the eyes of the international community, you know, there'd be little confidence in that bid going in now, coming out of bankruptcy, and it would just, it, you know,
I'd maybe um, err on the side of wow, what an opportunity, and what a time to like pull everything together and like really have a mission and drive towards something rather than sort of having no mission. You know, there's like probably two sides to this, but it could be a great opportunity to drive rugby, check standards internationally at all levels of how they're competing globally, under 20s, you know, under 18s, et cetera, and look at what's going on here and how they can get the standards up, and you know, um, could could be a good opportunity too.
That's a great point because if one thing that could have saved USA Rugby, or I think the one thing that USA Rugby was going for in for a home run was getting corporate sponsorship, and nothing would bring in corporate sponsorship like USA Rugby is coming to the US. I mean, look at what it does to the Olympics. Look what it does well to soccer. If the World Cup was coming to the US, you better believe that every other major brand out there would partner itself with USA Rugby, lock in step, and unload buckets and buckets of long-term commitment. So, oh boy, I'd hate to be the one that has to make a decision on something like that. JJ, I love your thinking, but the cautionary tale that we're in right now, what Shaggy's talking about, my initial reaction was no way. And of course, you have to come in and give us the other perspective, which sucks. I hate you for it.
You've got world,
I like JJ's perspective better, honestly.
yeah, you've got World Rugby sitting on the board now, and like you know, there's different things in play now. So I don't know if it's something that shouldn't be looked at least.
Yeah, yeah. In the favor of that argument, I would say the sevens is different than 15s, right? And the whole world coming here for over a month and generate a lot of revenue across the country. It's a lot different. So I mean, it's probably worth looking at the real financials. How did Japan do this year? How did where was it in 2015? How did yeah, the UK do in 2015, and just see how they did, because we may have lost money on the Sevens World Cup. I don't know how. I paid a lot of money for the tickets that I bought. It seemed to me like they should have been making money hand over fist there. So so maybe there is a way for them to make money, and maybe there's a way for them to ensure.
I mean,
Cool.
the beauty is oh, I'm sorry. So like
No, no, you go ahead, though.
the one commentator that I was listening to was talking about how, with soccer, a lot of times because they have, it's a much bigger tournament. They have, and you have to build a lot of times a bigger infrastructure. So like in Brazil, and South Africa, they ended up having to. It's just such a bigger tournament. They ended up having to build soccer stadiums, just to be able to host all the events. And now we're 2 or 3 years later, and a lot of those stadiums are now sitting empty. So obviously, we wouldn't have to. It's the same argument that countries have who host the Olympics. I mean, you have to build a lot of infrastructure to be able to host an Olympics. The Rugby World Cup would be a little bit different, because obviously our infrastructure would be existing American stadiums, and so you would just have to retrofit them. But you'd have to be, and obviously, I think someone had mentioned that traditionally they try the tournament lends or bleeds into the fall, or the last one was in the fall. So I don't. You obviously couldn't do it in the fall. I think you'd have to do it just prior to the NFL season, just prior to the American football season starting, and then yeah, you would have to kind of retrofit a few stadiums, but it's nothing like having to build a brand new stadium. Um, it, it,
I was in Japan for the last one, for 10 days, and went to like 3 games, and it was my first World Cup, right? And I can tell you, it is phenomenal. The amount of different cultures and people in one place, a rugby stadium atmosphere and culture is phenomenal. You got chants going from every part of the world outside the stadium before you get in. There's a real feeling of togetherness in the rugby before you even enter the stadium, regardless of which country you're supporting. And it leaves you with that memory. And I think having that international presence here and having people feel that is phenomenal for the sport here. Not to feel like you're isolated here. There's a whole world of rugby out there waiting to join in and come into the country and interact with it. It's that's how I feel. Anyway.
Oh,
All
wow,
right.
I'm just suddenly optimistic.
Yeah. All right. That's pretty awesome. We could talk about that for an hour. I know I have a lot of
Apparently,
questions around that.
apparently.
I know.
Okay.
So putting that aside, any other news, rugby or youth
Yeah,
related or anything?
Well,
there's so much news, Daniel. Go ahead, Shaggy.
there's so much. I mean, so Myro leaderships have been getting together just every week, trying to work through issues that we've all perceived and had, and we just voted through two committees to really kind of to help with the community with both communications and team development. How those come along within the next week or two, we'll see. But everything. But the two committees are essentially tasked with really focusing on those two areas that and simplifying uh, both those areas because they're we see them as weaknesses. Um, so hopefully that'll bring everyone from our community, everyone that's running their clubs and teams, able to really unify under the state banner and better get information out and better get information in, and hopefully make it easier for new teams to really start sprouting up when we can come to the other side of this.
Hey, Shaq, I got a question. How much resistance was there to forming that committee, or was it something that everyone felt like, yeah, we need something like that?
All right. Well, there was resistance initially, and there was a lot of it, and that was all due to miscommunication, which was the entire purpose. And that completely illustrated the absolute need for communications. This communication committee needs to be responsible for streamlining communication between everyone, between the board, the leadership. I mean, there's so many separate tiers within Miro. So we have membership, we have general membership. With clubs, each club's individual. Then you have you have a leadership committee, and then you have an executive committee, and then you have the board, and we all meet separately. So that obviously, so this is just meant to streamline through, and yeah, there was resistance, but there was a couple proposals put out there, and they and they're supposed to be counter proposals, and they basically said the exact same thing. So we all were just fighting but agreeing at the same time. So it was no problem. Hopefully that's the communications will take care of itself. The other committee, was things tend to get stuck in procedure, and that was that was the pushback, the procedural things, the procedure through things. So things were, things were brought up like a month ago. We met millions of times, right? And it was like, and then at the end, we're all kind of agreeing but disagreeing, picking things apart, and that's just kind of how things go. And hopefully, it's just going to go better next time.
All right.
All right.
Any other news?
Hey Daniel, I think I've got to say, I mean, like we've had no news for a month, and USA Rugby's been active. I'll save it for my shout out later. I do have to say the big news today from World Rugby that they've changed the laws, that you're no longer allowed to score a try against the goalposts
Oh,
effective
yeah.
today. That's relatively big news. Um,
So all of you playing
it's
this weekend, make sure that you don't attempt that.
effective
What I
immediately.
wonder I wonder if that's just like the beginning of some potential other law changes that are coming.
Yeah, well, I would say it is, and as a matter of fact, I think the press release that came out does say that they're continuing to look at this new kicking rules about being able to kick directly into touch from certain parts of the field. And so yeah, it's exactly that. They were very clear about it. They said this is safety related. It's like it just doesn't make any sense. Defenders can't defend. There's some people playing shenanigans around the goalpost, and they just said, bam, that's why it was easy for them to make that call. And they also alluded to Daryl, a couple others that are coming down the pipe, which I think if you're paying attention, you probably heard that they've been toying with those ideas and trialed them. I don't know where they're trialing it. Does anybody know? Pro D2 or something like that. They're trialing it somewhere. Some new rules. Well, they're trialing it nowhere right now, but they
Yeah,
would be trialing
nowhere.
it.
Yeah,
But
can you get that on TV where they're trying it?
yeah, it's coming though. It's coming, right? Skylar, you wanna pipe in and let them know rugby's coming back?
Yes, I do. So New Zealand is much better than the US in the sense that they actually do what they're supposed to do, and they're like they're good with the coronavirus, and they're starting to open back up again. And so there's Super Rugby New Zealand. They need a few weeks to start training and stuff, but they're starting back up again. Basically, just New Zealand Interpros starting June 13th. So
Wow.
there's 5 New Zealand Super Rugby teams, so it'll be 2 games a week. There'll be a game it's New Zealand time, but it's like Saturday and Sunday, which will actually be Friday and Saturday. But yeah, I'll
So
have rugby to watch.
All
That is
right.
So-
so are they shooting like without fans in the whole bit, or
Yeah. So
yeah?
I'm like close stadiums, and I mean it doesn't start for another month, but it's rugby, and also they've still got the Mitre 10 Cup, which that's not till September, but I mean that's still it's rugby that's planning on being had.
The Bundesliga in Germany, which is German's professional soccer league,
soccer.
is supposed to start this weekend. So I think These are all good signs.
It's funny. I was going
Indeed.
to ask if any other major leagues around the world are going to be starting soon, or is rugby going to be one of the only ones? Because every other sports channel in the nation is going to be dying for material. I mean, they've been digging in for classic this and top five that, but nothing really is a good substitute for live sports. So the world's going to be getting a big dose of German rugby and New Zealand German foot German soccer rather, and New Zealand rugby. It'd be amazing to just turn on the TV on a random afternoon in the United States and get, New Zealand rugby. That'd be like, what just happened? That's amazing.
We can't wait.
Exactly. All right. So, any more news? Any more news, guys, folks?
There actually is, but we got to get going with the show, man.
Yeah, we we do tend to do this, don't we? All right, so let's go ahead and dive into the topic itself. And then, we've gone from world and we're going to zero in real tight on youth rugby. And so the question that we're posting out there, the topic that we're posting out there is basically why is it that more senior side clubs don't have a youth team associated with them. So there are some, and we're going to hear from some of these clubs as to what are the benefits, what are some of the challenges, because I think things that would be really great to find out is what are the benefits, what are the detractors, what are the things you want to watch out for, and tied to that, maybe we can explore which are the type of clubs out there that should be looking into starting a youth club, and what are the types of things that maybe would be not signs that perhaps you should not have a club. Like, when are you getting over your head, and when is it actually the time to start a youth club? Does that make sense? So with that, let's go ahead and kick it off. Like, why don't more senior side clubs don't have a youth side? I mean, it just from a grassroots experience, right? And that's what I know of the sport that I love, union rugby has always been a very grassroots sort of sport. Everything about it. Now it's getting a lot bigger nowadays, and nothing to me says more that you are nurturing it from the root than jumping in and participating in having a youth team, particularly if you're a club. I mean, there's more and more rugby around nowadays, but for the most part, if you're a senior side club, you are the bastion, you are the core of USA of rugby in the US and particularly the Northeast. Who else, I can't turn to a rec club and say, rec clubs, why don't you just start one yourselves? I can't go to a soccer league and say, hey, why don't you guys start one yourselves? The people that should be starting one, to me, makes sense, should be a senior side club. So why isn't that happening? You know, what, where do we have examples of that happening or not? So somebody want to pipe in and kind of expand my brain and let me know what are examples and what are things to think about?
So in my so I was lucky enough to be able to spend some time in Wales and France, and I got to see what a quote unquote rugby club looks like.
Hmm.
And what I mean by that is that's where a club owns its own clubhouse, has its own locker rooms, and maybe a little mini restaurant and showers, and then they own their own pitches. Right, they're not going to Parks and Rec and trying to rent fields or anything like that. They own their own pitches, and a lot of times they own two pitches, usually at minimum. Um, uh, so in Ireland, it's just a different. It's such a different culture that clubs own and run their own clubs, that it's baked into like the government system, and the government gives them assistance. The local town gives them assistance, and you're representing you're really your community in a lot of ways. And so in here in the U.S., our idea of a club is just it's a little bit different by the very nature. I mean, we could never approach Boston Parks and Rec and say, hey, we want to purchase this park over here so we can build a rugby club on it. they would say, "Go pound sand. It's not for sale. That's just not going to happen." Real estate in the United States is extremely expensive, so it's kind of some of the reasons why there aren't too many clubs that own their own facility. And I think that part of it is one of the reasons why we get hampered with this idea of expanding our club. And so when I first got to New England, I got the job with USA Rugby. That was kind of one of my goals, was to try to see if we could expand the clubs. And a lot of the clubs told me that we do one thing really well, and that's just run a men's club or run a women's club. And we've thought about expanding, adding on a women's side, adding on youth side, but we spend so much time and energy just running our one-dimensional niche club that when the day is over, we just don't have any brain width to tackle something else.
Yeah, you know what? I've heard that from a couple of people. You know, a couple clubs I've talked to, and it's too bad. You know, it's sad that they don't recognize that it's just a framework, right? And it's just it's a way of expanding their club, right? The club is just, you know, it starts at the bottom, the community, especially when like American clubs, a lot of them haven't been around forever, right? And like we're just getting into generation one in a lot of these clubs of of old boys, and the old boys that having those kids come through the system, right? So once they graduated old boys and had the kids, and they didn't find the value in the youth rugby systems. That they just can't connect it to the greater good of the club. Now when we're starting at there are these flag teams, and you do have men's clubs that are connected to youth teams. Um, uh, it's just I think it's the value is kind of just there. It shows, and with the growth of the youth sport, I think it's a harder argument for the teams without the youth clubs to go on
And
without
Dar-
expanding.
right, and tying into what Shaggy's talking about, Daryl. I mean, I've heard that in some wonderful lands over the pond, that's how the clubs run themselves. That's the reality elsewhere. And yes, being able to have showers, a pub right there. I've heard stories that some clubhouses have second floors, so you can actually from the second floor watch the game while you have a pint as an old boy. And okay, that blows my mind, and I love that. No, I like that. What I love is what I've heard, that clubs overseas have their senior sides A, B, and C's. Um, they have the women's sides. They have their Colt sides. They have their U's, 18s, 14s, 10s, whatever, all the way down. So you have like this culture that you build, an identity that you build with this cross pollination of different ages coming together. And any time that you see these communities, these cultures coming together that share a bond and help each other become better. Um, for the most part, good things come from that, and I love that thought that I could go practice with the old boys and have a game once a month, once every 2 months, and I'll only show up once a year. And my kids can actually be part of the same club and they can go practice, once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week while they look up and say, hey, look at my old man, he sucks. I wish I actually played like some of the senior side guys that are really good. So I love that. And that doesn't exist here, and I think it doesn't exist here in just about any sport. Now, that's not true. You can participate, you can join a country club and like golf and tennis and some other sports, swim teams, swim clubs. A lot of them have their own pools, and you do have that sense. But organized, sports and organized, competitive contact sports, That's not the case. They're very fractured off, and they have, they don't have the sense of legacy and longevity and bringing up the peewees. Um, there are leagues, that cater to different ages, but I'm not sure that it's exactly the same thing. And I'd love to see more of that in the United States, and I'd love to see more senior side clubs having their own youth club that, as you age out of playing, and you don't want to give up, your tie to your club, and you don't want to give up your tie to the sport, you can give back by being an assistant coach, by being a helper, by being a head coach to some of these youth clubs. I'd love to see more of that. JJ, am I cutting you off?
Yeah, just like
Yep.
teacher.
Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was curious because I'm not familiar with all the sports and in the US, but are there other sports in the US that have that adult club culture? Or is it zip? Like there's nothing out there.
I think that's what makes it so eye opening when you do get a chance to see that. It's because we don't have that legacy
Hmm.
in esports. I mean,
Soccer
in a
clubs,
country club, golf in the country club is maybe the closest thing.
Yeah, that's a
But like
version.
yeah, but like American football, there's no real legacy. I'm not going to play for my dad's little league football team. It doesn't exist for basketball, baseball. I mean, you and your dad both might be fans of the same team, but as far as like this legacy thing where I'm going to play for my dad's little league team and then go to my dad's college and then go, it's
yeah.
fragmented.
When where I grew up in Australia in Sydney, we had our youth club sides. We didn't have a men's team. Sort of 4 or 5 of them would have filtered up to like Free Jacks, and another 3 or 4 would have filtered up to Northeastern. So we would have had that. They were connected to us, but just just through culture, not sort of formally. That would be our club because we're in an area and we would fall under it. So I don't remember there being that youth and adult culture in Australia either growing up. That was a long time ago, obviously. Obviously.
Oh,
So
Chris.
that, oh, Chris. Oh,
Dang it, man.
so
Yeah.
so not to dump on the system too bad. It's the beauty of what you see like in places like Colorado with the Glendale Raptors. Now, granted, they got the benefit of being able to build a club from the ground up, and then what they did was you had it was actually a bunch of guys that used to be part of the Denver Barbarians, and they fractured off and created the Glendale Raptors, and then they won on the women's side, but so versus creating one out of thin air, they got the Harlequin Old Girls to merge with them to create their women's side. So they didn't have to create one from the ground up. They just got a women's side that was already existing to merge with them, which is going to be a tough sell for a lot of, that'd be like Beantown merging with, like, say, the Free Jacks and then changing their name to the Lady Free Jacks. That is not going to happen. They are not going to do that. And then, part of their structure was that they wanted to build a proper club. And so they waited until the men and the women got established, and then they actively started building on a youth side. There was a strong youth movement in Colorado, and so they wanted to have a team that would represent in that league. And they honestly, they probably started out as a moneymaker, right? If we can get kids to play under our large banner, kind of like the Free Jacks might be able to do, and they started it out as a moneymaker. But obviously now it could be a legacy thing. So it's possible, and hopefully you don't have to have the the financial backing that a team like the Glendale Raptors, which owns a stadium, it shouldn't have to be like that. But I think those are a lot of our examples here in the U.S. Unfortunately.
Yeah. Hey, sorry, I was on mute there for a while. I agree with most of what we were saying, and I was reflecting on what you brought up, Daniel. It's like, where in America do we have this model? And it's really nowhere, right? We do have successful youth sports, in particular, youth soccer, club soccer, AAU baseball, AAU basketball, very successful, very lucrative financially, and a lot of fronts, but also has plenty of players in the system, and they're getting good training. And so that model is working, right? And so that's the model that we're predisposed disposed to. So, but the good news is, Daniel, your vision to be more like the clubs that you might find in the UK and Ireland, or France, like that's something that we could get behind, right? That's literally a foreign concept, but it's a foreign concept that a culture that would be welcomed, right? There's nobody that is resisting this notion, right? It's just about getting it done. And so that probably transitions us to, like, why not? Why can't it get done? It's not about the clubhouse with the second deck, right? It's about the people, and it's about the structure of the club, and where you have to start. It's interesting, Daryl. I know you had a few points, and I'm sorry if I take any of these here, but for me, the interesting thing, the way that it works is that in youth soccer and youth baseball, typically kids grow up and they're coached by their parents, right? And then and club rugby, senior club rugby, is typically a bunch of 20 somethings, right? 20 something year olds, and they're not ready to, they're first of all, they don't have any money to even pay for gas to get to the field a lot of the times. But they don't have the training and wherewithal to coach kids, and they don't have the desire to coach kids. So really, it's not until you get a senior club that has an established player base that grows old and becomes an old boy side, that's when you can start to have a youth program. So it's interesting dynamic, the way that we're not really building from the base. You have to actually build the old boys. You have to have our generation. We've been talking about. Navesh is a rugby dad. Daniel, you're a rugby dad. I'm a rugby dad. You got to sort of have the rugby dad generation in order to build a youth program, because that's where the coaches come from. Those are the kids that have the training and temperament experience to deal with kids.
Now,
So I could,
go, Daryl.
yeah,
JJ.
I know. Yeah, yeah, I'm good. So I had a question. So Centaurs, we started as a kids club. Um, I, how do we start an adult club? Like, how do we build an adult team? Because I feel that we've got this capture from Boston out to Framingham, where is there a men's team out there? There's obviously varsity teams in college, but
Well,
is there a men's team in that band as well?
you got a
Oh, for
lot of
sure.
college. You got a lot of college sides, Division 2, Division 3 in that area. You have a lot of college sides that are state schools. So I don't want to make generalizations. It's just in my experience what I've seen. In some of these schools, the kids that go there tend to stay in the area. Other schools that I've seen in other parts of New England, um, the kids don't stay in the area. They leave. But I think in the area that you're talking about, a lot of those kids do stay. If you talk about Framingham, a lot of those kids do stay in the area after they're done. So I think, tongue in cheek, you're kind of looking at it from the other way, from the other perspective. Chris is talking about how a club can retain its old boys, can have that sense of legacy by engaging them back in being involved with youth club once they are out to pasture, like myself, right? You're out to pasture. Hey, you know what? Get useful. Go start a rugby club. From your perspective, and JJ, you're talking about it the other way around, and I'm going to say tongue in cheek. You have to wait for your players to get old enough to start a senior side, um, or just right
I'm going
exactly.
to set I'm going to set the other way and say, hey, there's like at least 5, 6 towns around us with high school teams. And hey, boys, what are you doing? And where are you going to go after this?
Yeah.
Like, that's it for you? Like, you're finished? Or what are you going to do? We've got a club here. There's a team ready for you.
Well,
Yeah,
They're
you know,
waiting.
I would
Hey,
love
hey,
to see that. I would love to see that.
and before
I wouldn't
and
get
before you finish, we need you guys down while you're at school. Come down and train the kids as well, and be a
yeah.
part of the culture. So reverse the theory.
I wouldn't get caught up on on anything of who's around you, who's can get involved, who can't get involved. If you can field a team, you know you already have a rugby club. It's you're a taxable entity. You have the structure in place. If you can field a team with adults, you
Mm,
know, do it.
just do it.
You
Yeah.
know, enter tournaments. Just do it. You know, it's just a matter of the conversation can go both ways. It's how do we expand culture? How do we get how do we fulfill the all ages like European model here, right? And yeah, I mean it can go both ways. Honestly, if the Sharks, if I had 7 adults that wanted to compete and didn't have anywhere else to go, I would definitely start a team. I would definitely allow them to start a team under our organization. You know, just it's just the mind of expansion. You know, I mean, we don't have we don't have strict boundaries like they do in Ireland, or where clubs are established. So as long as it's not like, you're not obviously poaching, from another person, another established club's recruitment pool. I mean, it's all good, right? Because you're growing the sport, and if there's new players, it's new players. So, I mean, I think it goes both ways, really.
Yeah, it can
Daryl,
go both
Daryl,
ways.
what do you think?
Yeah. No, I think you're thinking about a Centaur's adult club.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He's thinking about it backwards, or looking at the other perspective. Yeah.
Well, I do know that I do know that we're thinking about a high school team, and so because we feel that at some point our we're attacking the elementary and the middle school ages, which is going to naturally mean that they're going to have siblings that are in high school. So we're actively thinking about high school teams, and especially as a bridge, because as a bridge to potentially varsity. So if we're in the Newton area and they don't have a varsity team at the high school, then maybe we just form a club team, and then that's the nucleus for a team that we take to the athletic director and say, hey, I've got 30 kids, they've been playing club, they're ready to go varsity. We just need your blessing and to fill out the paperwork. So from a Centaur standpoint, I would love to see us establish a high school club, and then and go on from there. If those kids come back home and they just graduated from college, in 4 or 5 years, yeah, that could be something that comes up. But I'd be interested in hearing what Craig has to say about how they run their organization, and what have been some of the hardships, and how they even got it going, how they got it started. Oh no.
Yeah.
I think
So
Craig dropped.
Craig, yeah, Craig dropped. But you know what? I'm gonna take what Chris said, and you know what they always say, that perfect is the enemy of good enough, and good enough will get you where you need to go, but it'll be more fun. So, um, Chris, I absolutely agree that if you are a club with a legacy, if you're a club that shows up to the pub afterwards and you see that two or three weird old dudes, or if you have your 20th, 30th, 40th, 50th reunion, and you have some people showing up you never knew who they were, and you want to be able to get social dues from them, by all means, get yourself a youth club started. So if you are a club in the Northeast that has some old boys, if you're a club that's been around for more than 20 years and you have old boys, start a youth club now,
Hmm.
okay? But let's go ahead and go with a good enough, okay? That's your assumption is you're going to have some resources that have plenty of time, want to be engaged. Also, as they get re-engaged, perhaps you can hit them up for social dues. So now you're double dipping with them, right? And what are some of the benefits of starting a youth club? I'll be honest, you can't look at them as a cash cow. You absolutely cannot look at them as a cash cow. But are they going to bolster your coffers? Yeah, they will. They absolutely will, because if you can leverage the same amount of resources you have right now, and bring in more players and give a top quality product to both the senior side and the youth side, you are golden, and you can start charging a mint for that product. And in this case, a product is, engaging the kids in beneficial outdoor activity, and also being part of the best sport, in the world. And where I'm going to go and give the other perspective to what you said, Chris, that would be perfect. But the truth of it is, as a Barbarians coach, our club right now really only has enough coaches that are free in their schedule to have practice once a week. We practice on the weekend, and then when we don't have practices because the season started, we play on that day. So on the days that we play, we don't practice. On the days that we don't practice, we play. So if you are a regular senior side club and you're playing on a Saturday, most most clubs, when they already pay to rent to use that field, they usually have that field for the rest of the day. There aren't a lot of other sports that are dying to use that space. Some in some cases there are, but in many cases you have plenty of time to have your B side matches. Okay, and in some cases your C side matches. Now, if you're having your A side match, if you're having your B side match, if you're having your C side match, it only takes a couple of committed players to stay after and run a practice for youth. So you've played, okay, maybe you played A side, maybe you played some B side, maybe you played B side and you got a little bit of A side play. That's amazing. Okay, maybe you're a C side player and glory to us, right? You got to play all of C side, which is all of, two 15-minute halves. Then you plenty have enough gas to be able to then run a practice afterwards. So I guess what I'm saying is, the perfect model is, yeah, if you're a team that's been around for 20, 30, 40, 50 years and you have a mess load of old boys, get a youth club started as soon as possible, because they can go into your 509c3 or however it is that your club exists. They're just another side, right? You're paying insurance for all that stuff. You're tacking it on to the youth players. Um, and if you're not that old, yeah, if you don't have that many players, if you haven't been around that long enough, make sure that it's not all on an administrator's shoulders. Divvy that out. But if you're done with your game, we're the Barbarians. We play and practice on the same day on a weekend. Now, do we want to be able to practice 2, 3 times a week and then be able to play? Yeah, that'd be ideal. That'd be wonderful. We're not there just yet. Do we have a great community? Do we do well at tournaments? Do we have a lot of fun at tournaments? Absolutely. So I think, Chris, I agree with you. You absolutely have to do it, right? If you're in that model. But I think as much as it taxes people, I would urge clubs that are fairly new to really start thinking about it. Does that jive with you?
Yeah, it does. It does. And where it jives with you more is the older clubs that don't have a youth team, right? In some cases it's like, why don't you Beantown, one of the most prestigious clubs in the Northeast, and you don't have a youth side, right? Or even Mystic's youth side is sort of mercurial, right? It's for such a big and one of the biggest clubs in the country. Their youth side, they don't really have, they're just building it now, right? And Boston's the same way, Boston men's, right? They've got some sevens teams, some high school sevens teams in the summertime, right? So, there's actually a lot of clubs that I described there that there's no excuse in that case. And then, yeah, even the junior clubs, yeah, they could still give it a go, right? And because they are incentivized to build a program that people want to come into, to sort of build their recruiting base, have kids that come into their club and know how to play, and also to grow the game in general. So there's a lot to good to come. There's a lot of good to come out of it.
Question: how many adult clubs are there in MA? And how many of those do have youth sides? Apart from all I can think of is the Wolfhounds at the moment.
Mystic Mystic has a youth club, right? They're an adult club and a Mystic in a youth club. And Chris, I'll push back against what you said a little bit. I think the Mystic Youth Club is now they only play one season. I'd love for them to be able to play more seasons, right? But they're pretty big. They're I
Okay,
think
yeah,
they're
that's
the
fair.
growing giant. I think
I
them.
I I agree with the Mystic is pretty big and pretty good because I've played against them for 3 years. There.
Yeah, you know what? So
Fair,
I'm gonna
fair enough.
defer. I'm gonna defer right here to Skylar, and I want Skylar to start talking about because I know the two clubs in the area that I think are the juggernauts that are successful senior side clubs and are showing real success at the youth side are the Irish Wolfhounds and Mystic. So, Skylar, I think you have some intimate experience with both of us. Can you tell us the size of both clubs, how many kids there are, how many coaches, how many times a week they practice, how competitive they are? Just go, give us the inside scoop here.
For the Wolfhounds.
I mean, the only thing I know about Mystic is from playing against them, but I can say for
Go.
the Wolfhounds that in the spring for 15s, we had practiced 3 days a week, and then sometimes games would overlap those days, so sometimes we'd only practice twice a week. Um, and then in the summer, it was 2 or 3 times a week plus games on the weekends. So we practiced Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then games sevens tournaments either Saturday or Sunday, and then 15's games in the spring would be either Monday, Wednesday, or Friday. Um, I don't. I mean,
Yeah, what about
And
coaches?
and you've played against Mystic, so are they 12 kids that show up and don't have enough kids and they need to borrow from you, or did they show up with an army
I
of referee
I
of coaches, players, and referees?
the second one. They've. I don't think I've ever played against a Mystic River team without enough players.
It,
Yeah,
are the adults there watching as well? Are they helping out, or is it one or two Mystic coaches and then just a whole bunch of kids?
I mean, I don't like inspect the Mystic River coaches and teams, but I know they have a load of refs. It's like I feel like more than half of the refs in Massachusetts are something to do with Mystic.
The adult refs or like youth refs, like high school kids or college kids?
The refs that ref the youth kids are involved with Mystic.
Right.
Most of them.
Okay.
Now, what about the Wolfhounds? So I'm curious about the senior side, like involvement. So like when you guys are playing, do you have do a lot of the men's players like hang out? You know, are you guys kind of involved in the same culture, or is it separate cultures? You know.
It's actually like I mean, I there's very little interaction as far as like practices and stuff with the men's clubs. I remember my first game with the Wolfhounds was the day that the Free Jacks played against Munster at the ICC for one of the Cara Cup games,
Oh yeah.
and that was
Yeah.
like sort of the whole day. It was like the old boys played, the men's played, the high school, middle school flag, like sort of all the teams played, and um then there was a tournament, and it was more of an adult tournament, but the Acton Tens it was a men's we it was North and South that we had a men's club and two high school clubs from North and South that were there, and that was I think probably the closest. That was the real connection between the high school and the youth. But I mean, there's not a lot of interactions aside from a few of
Yeah.
the adults from the Wolfhounds that'll coach the high school, middle school flag
You know,
kids.
I think it might be an issue with. I mean, when 15s is playing, it's kind of hard to hang out after you're on the field for 80 minutes, like going all out. Like the model I see for culture building, from top from bottom up is the Newport Sevens tournaments when it's great the sevens tournaments when the adult sides are playing, and short games, but they get to stick around, right? And and that everyone kind of hangs out. I mean, that's like an ideal situation. And I was thinking that with with any of these, any of these larger teams that have old boys all the way down to youth. It's just it's difficult to hang out the whole day. Um, but it's still a Wolfhounds culture all through. I'm sure you guys see each other. You see each other in passing. Everyone kind of recognizes each other, anyways. It's part of the same club, even without the jerseys on. So
Shaggy,
that's
when I was
important.
coaching with the Hounds, so they use sides. Yeah, there was no interaction with the older players. The youth side, we scrambled from whatever parents we could, just like every other club. They may have had some infrastructure support with the clubhouse and other things going on, but on the field and training, it wasn't really there. I don't know what they're working on, possibly to try and build that further, but I think there's definitely opportunity for them.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's really too bad. That's
but
like
but I'm sure it's tough, because getting out to those fields of an evening, a Thursday and a Friday, and 5, 6 to 7 or 8 o'clock at night, and when they've got their own commitments going on, is not an easy task. So there's got to be a way, and
no.
the culture's there, and I'm sure they want to in some way, shape, or fashion. The question
Yeah, no, like
is
one thing
how to
we
make.
did. So we're the South Shore Sharks, and we formed independently of the South Shore Anchors, like just completely separate. Like I played for the Anchors way back when. And when I joined the Sharks, it did nothing. It was already formed, the South Shore Sharks, and we ended up, moving the team to the initial, the formation point of the Anchors. So there's just like, there's this little overlap. We both have South Shore. We're both kind of, in the same areas, and so we were hanging out and getting some kind of cooperation together. It was nice. We had they invited the kids to. Had a cookout, like a clam bake cookout. So they invited the Sharks to come, and it was nice, just nice, you know, commutable. Even though we weren't on the same club, we're completely separate clubs. Like that was good. And I like those big community meetings of clubs was good. Even though we were separate, it was still that was the like that kind of community is the kind of the end point that I'd want to see for all adult clubs. The big cookouts with all
Yeah.
players, right? Not just
So
kids, but like
let me let
players.
me let me spin something forward, say 10 years, right? We've had World Cup rugby in America. Sports just blown off. Massachusetts youth clubs have doubled. We're now up to 20, 25 clubs. Um, are the men's clubs going to double?
I don't think so.
No,
I don't
no,
think so
they're
either.
not. Yeah, they're pretty stable. You're going to get more, but I think for the longest time, the fastest growing spectrum in the rugby community at one point was college, then it was collegiate women. They were taking off. I think youth rugby right now is pretty big. I think that's where we're seeing the biggest growth.
So it comes back to what I saw as a kid. We'd have 3 or 4 youth teams with a senior team, as in the Northeast of the Free Jacks, and we'd interact with that. It'd be 3 or 4 clubs. It'd be like um, Rentham, ourselves, and Abbeville sort of connected to a club that would work with us on different things and send some players down occasionally and do some fun stuff and turn up at events and promote the social side. But we would have as you just said, Shaggy, we'd have this sort of unofficial um, association for the kids to sort of aspire to look at those players. That's my team, and that sort of feel about it. And I think that's what we got out of it as kids. That was our team. That was our local adult team. That's the one we went to support. So I don't know if even for Centaurs, where do I send them? You know, Which team do I point them at? Apart
That's
from the
I'm sure
football.
funny. So JJ, I
competition for that.
forgot you've been around so much. I forgot that you were associated with the Irish Wolfhounds at one point, and I was going to ask you exactly what was just asked, and one thing that I like to hear from other folks. I mean, we just heard JJ's personal experience, but from the rest of us that are coaching youth or associated with youth at this point, what are the things that would make a significant impact on a youth player if they were associated with a senior side? So we know that the Irish Wolfhounds have a senior side and they have youth, and there's no connection between the two. Do we want to keep the two apart? Or do we want a certain integration? Do we want a certain communication between the two? Or is it safer? Is it better for all parties involved if we keep them as separate as possible? What are people's thoughts on that?
I'll say right now we're going through phase one. Like, so club culture now is college culture, right? So it's very much an adult thing. Once we have these players that have aged through the system, then I think that it'll be more easily associated. But as of right now, I think a lot of people get into have people that are in men's now generally started in college, like a lot of them, right? Or especially old boys. A lot of them started in college, so they started with that predominant drinking culture that rugby is partying culture. That's how you kind of learned it in college in a lot of instances. And to marry that with the youth ideals and just and to do away with that party mentality might be difficult, right? To properly marry the two, because if people are just used to playing 80 minutes, playing their ass off, bleeding, and going out and get drunk, that really doesn't tie in particularly well with Kool-Aid and pizza. I mean, it might, but not always. And when that one time that it doesn't, it was is throw the whole thing out, right? Um, so it's a tough thing. I just don't think that perspective is there to properly tie the two in at all levels, and I could kind of see why that would be why the Wolfhounds would keep things separate. A lot of maybe the adult players are really that they're just super competitive. They have that bar culture, and that just doesn't jive well with with the kids, and that's cool. But at times it can, like for instance, with like the example I said before, that cookout, that clam bake, with the Yankees, it's just public drinking, but it's on the beach and it's all good. It's horseshoes, so it's fine.
Yeah, I want to talk about that later, actually, Shaggy. But Daryl's got his hand raised.
Nope.
All right. Well,
Fire away.
even if it's a loose connection that the men's club might have, because a lot of the like we're using Beantown as an example. A lot of the Beantown players are postgraduates, and so they're like in their 20s, right? They're 20, 25. They are a lot of these girls want to play for the Eagles, so you need to play for a WPL club to be seen by the selectors. And so again, it's most of the players in like their 20s, maybe 30s. And a lot of them are not thinking about what they're going to be able to do for kids and help kids, and they're not thinking the whole legacy thing. So, and I think you're right. It's going to be a lot of the old boys, the old girls that started having kids and coming back and coaching their own kids. But from if I'm Beantown, and one of the things I've made the argument for is that I can't concentrate with that, man. Come on, you're killing me. If I'm the fundraising director at my club, and I'm going after Coca-Cola, Pepsi, whoever, I want to be able to go to my advertiser and say I have 100 people, 200 people on my club, and so at any given day when you come to a match, there's 100, 200 people on the sidelines. right? It's not just my men's club, which is roughly 35 guys and hopefully a couple of girlfriends. It's no, I've got a men's side and I got a women's side, and then we're gonna have our minis play at the end. We might even have a Colts game on or something. When I tell an advertiser I've got more players. Also, the next thing, if I can go to Denver Parks and Rec, or not Denver Park, Boston Parks and Rec, and usually Boston Parks and Rec or whatever organization or park organization you're going to talk to, if you're an adult club, you fall low on their list of priorities as to who to give the park permit to, right? Because most parks departments will say that I am mandated to make sure youth sports are on my fields. To the fact that sometimes I'll even give those permits away for free. So a lot of times the argument I make with Beantown is that if you want to practice on Tuesday and Thursdays and you're having a tough time getting a permit, that's when you do your youth practices. You do an hour of youth practice and then you do your adult practice afterwards, or vice versa, or whatever. And then you can have your old boys practice right afterwards. But or if you have a guys maybe go first, girls go second, youth goes first, then the women, then the guys. I mean, as soon as you tell them that you've tied in a youth organization and you got more people coming, that's when they start thinking, well, oh, you got youth, okay, well now talk to me about a permit. And it goes the same way if you're going to talk to like a high school or college that has extra field space. Coach JJ's been able to do a really good job at UMass Mount Ida. They now don't have a lot of sports, but now they have lots of space on their campus. And you tell and I guarantee you, if I go on there and talk to them, hey, I got a men's club looking for space, they're going to tell me to go pound sand. If I tell them I got a youth kid, I got kids that need a park permit, they're going to be like, come on board. We love kids.
Okay, yeah, over here.
Oh,
So I'm thinking on the same lines, but I'm fundamentally asking the question: why the adult club attached to the youth club? Like, what is the benefit? Like, what are we looking at fundamentally? Is the benefit is to help grow? Is it to help train? Like, what is the benefit for the youth club being started under or being under? Like, what is the real tangible benefit? And the same then asks another question. So I think we should be starting adult touch rugby teams in our clubs. I'm going to throw that out there because I think the adult touch rugby teams are going to grab more people because there are going to be more people out there that can and will play. And they're likely going to be connected to the kids and potentially pulling more coaches into the training. So rather than focusing on, yeah, I think you get the idea. What do you think, Darryl?
Yeah,
Chris? Yeah.
yeah.
I
I'm
love
sold.
that idea. I think at our practices, we had lots of adults incorporated into our practices, our training sessions. And these are parents that a lot of them didn't, well, I'd say 50-50 of them played. But if you told them that, hey, we're just going to do some touch, a little competitive, and let the kids play over there, or we'll pick a night where we were making kind of an adult night where you can have an adult beverage, I think they'd love it. It's kind of like your idea of like a bowling night or something like that.
Except
Softball.
way better than bowling. Way better than bowling.
Way better. Your hands in anything.
So I like JJ's question, but I'm gonna call foul on it. I'm gonna bring it back to the focus of youth, and then I'm gonna bring it up again. No, I've written it down because that's a really good point, and it's something that I've been trying to do more and more, and I think I'm going to red card. I'm actually going to incorporate that as fast as I can with my practices, and that is while I'm coaching youth. I'm going to not only bring in the parents and have them help me because that means they're more involved in it. That means they want to come out. It'll help the kids stay there. I'm also going to set up during my practices a parents and adults touch game. Okay, but let's put that aside. I think that's an excellent concept. That's an excellent uh, uh, um, topic to talk about. But I'm going to bring it back and I'm going to do something that I've been wanting to do. And we asked and I'm so smart and dumb at the same time. Um, we asked what would make a difference to a youth team if an adult team was involved. JJ talked about how in the Irish Wolfhounds, they don't necessarily stick around and engage with a youth club. And my question was, well, do we want to keep separate them or do we want to keep them together? And you know what? We have the perfect person to ask. So Skylar, if you get yourself off of mute, I want to ask you, what would mean something to you? What do you want? Do you want these stinky adults away from you while you practice with your friends? Because oh God, adults, they're just they're adults. Um, or what would mean some? What can adult side do that would make you go, oh wow? And what does oh wow mean? Go.
Uh, I mean, the one thing that I can say about the where's your hand about the connection probably that I most noticed between the adults and the youth with the Wolfhounds is that like kids that have played for the Wolfhounds youth, like there was a kid that I played with who played high school for the Wolfhounds last year, and he graduated, was playing in college, and then he went on and was playing for the men's side. So there is sort of that like, and I don't know how many players have done that, how many players that I know that have played youth that are like would go on to play senior side, but that would be the
So let me pull it back one more time. So you are a youth player.
yes.
If the senior players were to do something, what could it be to make you go, wow, I am so proud to be an Irish Wolfhound youth player and I want to stick around and keep playing for the Irish Wolves? What could they do? Like stay away? And if you say stay away, don't ever show up, that's fine. But what could they do that would make you go, wow, I'm appreciated? Or wow, I want to stick around, or wow, I want to go to the next stage with rugby. Skylar, go.
I mean, there's quite a few people raising their hands here, but I mean, I think it's fine the way it is. That sort of there's some the senior side Wolfhounds that'll be like coaches for the youth, and then the occasional tournament where all the sides will be together, and all the sides will be together and kind of have the sharing a tent, everyone's got the squeezy water bottles, and you're sort of all like it's just one big rugby community. But then that's sort of rugby is, it doesn't matter what team you play for, what club you're from. Yeah,
That's rugby.
That's
All right.
that'd be my say. Is I feel like the main connection would be the coaching, and then the moving through the ranks, play elementary school, middle school, high school, adult.
I absolutely agree with Skylar. I think it's, I majored in, my undergrad was in marketing, which means I did a lot of advertising and promotions. To me, it's branding, right? It's about branding. I work out at the YMCA, and they do a youth basketball clinic, and they brand it as the Boston Celtics Youth Basketball Clinic, right? And they might get one Boston Celtic that's going to come by for the entire 6 weeks, but really, it's not even so much about that. It's about the kids are going to get a jersey that says Boston Celtics Junior Celtics on it, and it's the branding. So it's just like with the free jacks. They're going to call them baby backs or baby jack or whatever. To me, it's about branding. And even if you don't get those players to do a lot of coaching and helping, which in some ways, yes, and even in a lot of some ways, you don't even want some of those coaches or players to be your coaches because they're not in the right frame of mind just yet. It's all about the branding. It's all about the idea that maybe I'm going to play for Mystic. One day I could possibly play for the Wolfhounds. Beantown is a club that I work with a lot. When I started telling Beantown that you imagine a bunch of little 10-year-old girls wearing Beantown jerseys running around and they're looking at you like heroes, right? Because one day they might want to be a Beantown player, and or you're looking down and you're seeing the legacy that's going to be created coming up after you. And I fully realize that a lot of those girls that are playing on Saturdays, playing in the WPL, are not going to be my coaches. In a lot of ways, I'll tell them, if you don't like being around kids, then please don't come around the kids. I want people that want to be around kids, or I want the old girls who are retired that now have kids, and they want to come back and coach their own daughters. So to me, it's all about, even if you don't have that connection between a direct connection between the adult club or the adult players. To me, it's about the branding episode. I mean, when I think of Mystic and I think of the fact that they have a youth club, I think that's incredible. If Mystic had a women's club, even if the men weren't talking to them every single day, I would think that's awesome. Mystic has a men's, a women's club, and a youth side.
Yeah, let me get in here for a little bit. I'm inclined to agree. I've got a few things to say. One, just about the question you asked to Skylar earlier, about what's in it for a kid, and there's so much, right? For one, if you're involved in a club, you're surrounded by 30 or 40 mentors and guiders who maybe just give you a little bit of insight on your box kick or your drop kick or your pass, right? Instead of getting one coach from the Barbarians, you're getting 40 coaches, right? It's just these little tips and pointers and position specific, right? You might be connected to the other team's fullback or scrum half, and they might give you this little pointer that only a scrum half or a fullback would know. And but if your coach is a prop, and you're not going to get that feedback, right? So that's for me. It's so subtle that maybe you don't notice it, but it's there. Another one I just want to maybe bring to attention is opportunities for life, even jobs. Even jobs when you're in high school, you want a high school job. But the anchors sponsored a kid who went to South Africa, and he got hooked up with South Africa. He did that on his own through the anchors coach, and this kid was a high school student. He went over and he did a tour in South Africa. He got selected for a team or a tour that toured maybe Argentina, and then the anchors got together, did a GoFundMe, and sponsored like $2,000 for this kid, something along those lines, right? So there's a lot of opportunity when you're associated with a big club to maybe go on a tour. Let's just say you're associated with the Centaurs. Hey, I happen to know a guy who founded the Centaurs, who maybe he's in Singapore, or maybe he's going to be in Australia in a few years. Maybe a kid might get an opportunity to go to Singapore or Australia. There's huge incentives for kids, whether it's jobs, tours, and or other rugby opportunities. It could be very valuable. I think there's a lot to be said for it.
So I'm gonna pipe in here again because I'm hearing. I think I understand, but I think I heard two different things, and I wanna call these out because I think I thought of this completely wrong. Part of the reason why I asked Skylar to give us a perspective from her as to what she would like to see the senior side um, do to be able to that would mean something to her. I thought she was going to say, have a spaghetti dinner, have a pizza party for us, do a skit afternoon, show up, in the middle of practice one day and start singing a particular song. And Skylar actually said none of that. So I was very surprised to hear that Skylar kind of wants the adults away. She does not want the other team anywhere near her. I didn't hear her say, I want to see this, 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 and this. In fact, everything I heard from her was, it's nice to be associated with that club, but she never said, I want them showing up. I don't want extra coaching. I don't want an adult to say, "Hey, I know where you are. Hang in there. It's kind of tough." I didn't hear any of that, which actually surprised me. I'll be honest, it completely surprised me. I would have thought, and maybe I would make this mistake. I would think that if I was part of a senior side club and I was an old boy, moving my way out, and I saw that the Colts were practicing, on X, Y, and Z evening or after the games had played, I'd stick around afterwards and I'd act like, an old boy to try to connect and reinforce those bonds. But I think what I heard from I didn't hear any of that from Skylar. I kind
I
of heard the opposite.
I think a lot of it is that you're looking to maybe bounce off of their infrastructure. You're looking to so if it's a Wolfhounds, you're looking to be able to play in their facility, ideally. So if you're Mystic and Mystic has its own facility, you're looking to be able to play in their facility, and it just happened to sponsor a youth club, and now they've got their numbers up. Now they can start a women's club, or they can start their old boys club, and so you're really looking to. It's going to be kind of the same thing with like the Free Jacks. I mean, the Free Jacks are hoping just bounce things off of their name brand, right? The fact that they're the professional club, and if they can bounce off some other youth things associated with it, if they can get a women's side, they can get a side in the WPL. They would love to be able to. It's branding for them, right? If they get a Free Jacks club in the WPL, that's more branding for them. If they can get an academy system program going, that's just more branding for them. If they can get a whole youth program started, that's just more branding for them. And you may or may not need the players to come down and help you. You just want to have a jersey that says whoever it is you're playing for.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, obviously the Free Jacks are the model that we'd show any adult side rugby club and see and show them what to do, and and with the value that the Free Jacks see in the youth, and obviously they're creating the pathway forward for the kids, which is obviously all the kids need to want to remain associated at least with the Free Jacks. Now, the thing I see with only providing infrastructure for a team is you're not building that culture. You're not having that spaghetti dinner. You're not having. I mean, those things. Um, those are the things that really tie you in. I mean, obviously, there's certain clubs where just the success is there, all right, for the senior sides, and that will retain the kids. But who's to say a kid's not going to go through a college system, come out, learn, if they're not don't have that emotional connection, with the senior side, that they won't, play for the nearest club, because they've already played for a different team, yeah, I think in my mind that the social needs to extend to everyone, right? To some
Right.
extent. Obviously, you can't, the real the senior side social after game socials is its own thing. However, that team, the club meeting is just that's so valuable. Just the picture, just like, I can only imagine. My if I had if I was associated with an entire club, like the Wolfhounds, or like Mystics or Newport, or anything like that, just the whole get together, that's just its own its own reward, right? The whole
I
club
think,
just
I think
getting
you're
together.
I think you're exactly right. If you can tie in and make it as much of a club as possible, that that is that is incredibly powerful, and that's really what building a club is.
Yep.
I think in our initial idea of trying to entice a senior men's or women's club into it, I think those kinds of things sometimes kind of scare them. Um, like even like a Beantown, the idea of being a role model for other young girls, for some of those ladies, quite frankly, is very scary.
Too late.
Um, they don't necessarily look at themselves as a role model, and again, a lot of them are in their 20s, or maybe some of them are still in school. They're getting their first jobs. They're trying to figure out what they're going to do with their lives, where they're going to live,
Too
and
late. Too late.
yeah, and
I
they,
mean,
and
I
they,
get it, but too late.
no, no,
Keep
yeah,
going.
but as far as like trying to entice them, like when I talk to Charles River and I say, hey, here are the top 10 reasons why you should have a youth club. And a lot of those players, I don't think they look at themselves as role models and building the legacy piece up to it. So it's a lot of times it's gonna be that handful of maybe the 3 or 4, and really I only need like 3 or 4 to help me. I think the rest of them be on their best behavior when they're around the kids and they're swearing and drinking and doing stuff stupid. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think trying to build as close to a replica club as we possibly can when you're based at a park, as much as you can. I think is really important, and having your spaghetti dinners and your end of season banquets. When the kids are there, and you can bring them up on stage and celebrate their successes along with your adult members is important.
And you know what? I totally get it, and I was agreeing with you, but I was kind of adding in some color to what you're saying, and I wanna you know what? Just because we all kind of latch onto the things that mean something to us, I'm gonna latch onto something that Brad from Abibilla, sort of mentioned on Discord, and that is that every kid is passionate rugby in different ways. And I get it. In a lot of cases, you want to be able to build that separation between senior side rugby and youth rugby. We play different. The intensity is different. The camaraderie is different. The stages in our lives are different, and it's something that you need to, like all things life, you need to grow, mature, and evolve into. And I'm not saying that senior side rugby is or a particular senior side rugby team is the model for maturity, right? But what I'm saying is I see what Skylar is saying. I heard what Skylar is saying. Skylar did mention that she liked being associated with, but she everything she talked about made it sound like she liked a certain degree of separation between the two of them. And association is what meant something to her, but I didn't hear an integration of one way or another. For me as a coach, I like integration. And so I'm going to latch on to what Brad said, and that is that every kid is passionate in different ways. Everybody's an individual. So to me, I feel that that gives me a certain degree of license and certain degree of leeway to actually engage in the youth side and find how I can, in my own way, inspire the youth players that want to be inspired by the what I bring to the table. If they want to hear about forwards play, if they want to hear about scrum half, if they want to hear about, I'll tell them stories. You know how we are in rugby. You scratch a rugby player, you hear 20,000 stories, and each one is funnier than the next, right? So if I'm going to hold on to the fact that not, and I'm going to be very sensitive now to the fact that not every rugby player wants to have a spaghetti dinner with the senior side showing up and singing to them. Maybe that's a little too hokey. Maybe that's just not what they want, right? They don't want players showing up at their practices and joining in the drills or clapping from the sideline, to or showing up to their games and clapping them at the end of the game. I have to be more sensitive. I assumed as this session started, as the episode started, that that's what every youth club, every youth player was going to want, and I've just been schooled. I've been schooled with Skylar to understand that no, no, some players are perfectly inspired with me staying far away from them and just being really good at rugby. Fortunately, those years are behind me, so I'm going to leave that to the younger folks to be really good, right? All right, and and I think I'm tying into what Daryl was saying is the benefits. I'm sorry, over and over, time and time again, we talk about how hard it is to get space, get field space, field time, whether a youth or even harder if you're a senior side. And you know what? I'll be honest. If you're a senior side and you say that you got a youth club and you got to be able to secure some time for on the field for the kids, and you can leverage that into your regular practices. It's going to be easier to get. It's going to be faster to get. It's going to get cheaper to get. You're probably going to get more time because of it. That's and if nothing else, that's the atomic, what do they call it? They call it the ultimate solution or the ultimate point. You just tell any club it's going to be easier for you to be able to get and cheaper for you to be able to get field space. That right there should be like mic drop. That should be such an enticement for any senior club to say, start up a youth club.
I'm an idea guy, Daniel. I'm way before my head. I'm way ahead of my time.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that. Completely agree with
Hey,
that.
Hey
Yeah.
Daniel, I got a couple things that maybe got overlooked. While I agree, actually, offline conversation over here with Skylar, field space, the ICC, the clubhouse. There's a room there. There is availability to have dinners. We did talk about that a little bit, but I think you might have read in too much to it, right? Too much of it, right? Like we do love, or and Skylar, you can pipe in and say, but we do love the dinners with the team, right? Not the singing, but the dinners with the team. I'll just be a witness that when there is a men's club game at the ICC, Skylar does not want to leave. She watches the whole game. If there's a B-side game, she watches that. If there's a dinner afterwards, she stays for the dinner. She hangs. So you're a little bit you missed a little bit, but on the other hand, you're right on some of what you said, but like she does want to be around those rugby players. But on the other hand, you're right. You're right. We clapping on the sidelines, singing is probably not that big of a deal. But on the other hand, like I was saying earlier, there's much bigger things at stake too, right? So, okay, yeah, go ahead. And I want to talk about the clam bake too. So, go ahead.
Well, this is sort of what he was explaining, but like probably my like thoughts on the Wolfhounds would be sort of I know how it is, and I've gotten used to how it is, and I'm happy with the way it is. I don't know if it had started like if when I first joined the Wolfhounds, if it was all of the senior side old boys players, if we show up and there's 20 coaches instead of 5 or 6, like if I would like that better, if I wouldn't like it as much, if it would be like the same but different. Just sort of I'm happy with the way the Wolfhounds are, but also I'm a rugby nerd, and if there's rugby in the nearby, I'm there, and I want no part of leaving it.
Okay, so let me ask once again, and Chris, help us out with this one. Skylar, you said you're happy with the way the Irish Wolfhounds are. How are they? What are the things that they do that make you go, "This club rocks. I want to be here. I'm psyched to be a a youth rugby player, and I'm going to stick around with this."
I mean,
It,
my dad said it, but it was like
okay.
I mean like the field space, the whole facility, the the ICC. It's got, I mean, it's an actual rugby pitch. It's not like
I
a
love it. You
make
agree.
football field. And then even we've even got the sort of GAA fields that are awfully similar and usable. We're not allowed to use the big one, but there's the restaurant. It's a great space, and then there are like adult Wolfhounds players that are coaches. It's not all of them. It's not 40. It's a few, and then maybe I mean I'm gonna ramble here, so I'm gonna have someone shut me up.
No, you're okay.
You're good.
We weren't able to get the Mystic and the Wolf here tonight to be able to tell us what was the thing that kind of led them into um, going full circle and developing youth sides. I mean, I'm guessing what it came to was they wanted to be able to keep their old boys involved with the club, and the best way to do that was as they aged out and started having families and kids, and they wanted to come back and support their club. They just said, "Hey, you know what? I got a kid who's been playing soccer a couple times, but he doesn't really love it. How about if you bring your kid, I'll bring my kid, and you bring your kid, and maybe we try to see if we can start a youth rugby side or something." And it just kind of maybe started as simple as that, as a way just to kind of bring your old boys, back into supporting your club, which which that's a lot of times one of the reasons why you want to keep your old boys around is you're hoping that one day they're gonna start their own business, or they're gonna win the lottery or something, but they're gonna donate $1 million to your club. So if you can keep them around and either give them a social membership, or come to the club and coach your kid, which is awesome, or a referee or something like that. Anything to keep your old boys engaged with your club, a lot of times is key. So if starting a youth club is part of it, then do that. Planning a tour back to Ireland, that's the more the better. Having them sponsor one of the teams or something with their business. Anything you can do to bring them back and keep them engaged and involved.
Yeah, spot on, Darren.
Wow,
Yeah.
excellent point. Starting up a youth club to keep your old boys engaged. And guys, that's crazy. I didn't even think about that. And the truth of it is, the old like uh, the old boys are the established human beings that have seen life, have experienced the best of it because they've been through
Thank
rugby
you.
players, right? Exactly. um, and are probably at a stage in their life when they have a little bit more discretionary spending money, right? Their kids maybe have already gone off to college, their kids maybe are already married, they already started their own lives. Um, these are the whales. If you are a young 18, 20, 21, 25-year old president of a club, coach of a club, these are the players you want to be able, these are the individuals you want to tie back into your club to be able to give you money to be able to afford the field space, which is so incredibly expensive and hard to get, right? And old boys like disappear. They go off into the wilderness, they never come back for many clubs. And those are the players, those are the individuals, the human beings that are probably in an okay financial situation that can really help out the 21, 22, 25, 26 year olds that are trying to keep a club going and are fearing that if they don't do a good job, the whole club is going to collapse. So I never even, Daryl, that's an incredible point. I didn't even thought about that. Is if for nothing else, exactly, mind literally, my mind's blown. Folks, you kind of want to start a youth club so you can keep your old boys engaged so they can pay social dues and perhaps every now and then drop some money so you can afford and stop complaining about how expensive it is to get field space. Daryl, you're crazy. Did you study marketing or something?
I went to the Donald Trump School of Business. All right, I got my show it to you one day. All right, I'll show it to you. I went to Trump
Oh,
University.
oh, man. Hey,
Oh
well,
my
I would
goodness.
say
I
about this.
said,
I
you
think
turn
you
on
made
the
a good point. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, go ahead, Chris. Go ahead.
Can't hear myself. So really good point, and I actually think like I have like I mean I really appreciate that, and let me bring it back to the clam bake here, and let's make my similar spin on what you just said, but my motives are a little bit more altruistic and not financially based. We are the old boys, right? And so we actually this resonates with us. We are engaged old boys at this stage of the game, right? And I am engaged more so now because of my kids, right? I think maybe all of us on this call are, our playing days are wound down to not what they used to be, and I don't know, most of us anyway. um so we're speaking to ourselves, right? But one of the things I would say is like I appreciate like what I appreciate like so I am associated with the South Shore Anchors, and again yeah, and my kids brought me back into the fold, and I've been out there, and more now than I have lately. And one of the things that we do over the last few years is go to their annual clam bake, which I used to go to when I was much younger, and I used to have a really good time at the clam bake, and I still do when I go there. But this clam bake that Shaggy alluded to a couple times, I want to bring it up because because I had an epiphany the last time we were at the clam bake, and what the anchors were, um, in 12 years ago, or 10 or 12 years ago, when I was winding down playing with them, they were a men's side, a good men's side, and what they were this year at the clam bake was they were old boys, and they were the men's side, and they were the women's side, the Sirens, and they were the high school side, and then they also invited the South Shore Sharks as well, right? So there was multiple generations of rugby just at a cookout at the beach, having a blast, and it was the first time that I saw what, the vision of the president of the South Shore Anchors has right now is like to build that club, the type of club that you're dreaming about, Daniel, right? And I saw your dream coming up in the South Shore Anchors at that clam bake, and it's like it's better than money, right? It's a family, a big giant family. It's a culture, and it's something something it's what rugby's about. And so, it's doable and it's happening. I think the Wolfhounds kind of do have it. They got the clubhouse, and they've got the youth sides going, but the anchors over the past few years, starting up some youth programs and starting up some the women's program as well, and even trying to get a high school girls side too, right? So they even got some high school girls action, as difficult that was to start up. One of the things that I wanted to, maybe you want to punt it to another conversation, Daniel, but I want to make sure you know that the way that the anchors have done it, I don't think this is secret or proprietary information, is they have a board and they have an AGM and they create positions, right? Women's director, youth director, right? And that now you're giving somebody the responsibility to run with that ball. But you also have a club of 100 or 200 people, resources available to make it happen. But that was maybe one of the most simple way to make it happen is like, hey, we want a board position. It's going to be the youth director. Let's go. And then if you build it, they will come. So I don't know if you guys knew that or if that resonates with you, but it seemed to be to me about that simple. Um, that's it.
Absolutely, they should be able to have a vote because okay, so you know what? It's funny. The longer we go, the more we explore and come up with epiphanies. So I feel that if we keep going for another 6 hours, we will discover some more stuff. But I want to be able to put a bow on this and really sort of package it up and be able to say these are the bulleted items of why, if you're an established club or if you are a club that's just barely established, why you need to think about how having a youth club benefits you. And then we can move on to the subtopic if we decide, or on air we'll figure out whether we want to go there or not. But I want to make sure that at least we come up with real actionable bullets that we can pass on to clubs that are out there and say, hey, what kind of club am I? Am I an established club? Am I, a club that's only been around for 10, 15 years? Let's go around and hit and enumerate what are the epiphanies we came up with. What are the things that having a youth club tied to your senior side club will do for you? Why aren't there more senior side clubs running youth clubs? What are the huge benefits? So, guys, go. Let's just talk about real condensed bullet items. If you're a
Well,
senior side club, having a youth club will do this for you.
All
Go.
right,
I'll
I'll
say
go.
I'll
Oh, go
say
ahead.
the best selling point, the best bullet point I'd tell any senior club is it would produce it draw in a social side of adults, so that it will not only create their legacy, create a more community, but it will also expand their adult base, possibly with introductory players that can become ancillarily involved.
And why do you say introductory? Why not elite players on that one? You're just mostly introductory players.
Well, I think I think the focus on introductory players is there's not a lot of introduction in most clubs, and
Oh,
I think it's just that whole social aspect would. I mean, you can draw elite players, I'm talking about to the adult side, like immediately, like aunts, uncles, adults, not people through the system. Um, Eventually, yeah, you would be producing elite athletes through your own system, which would be, its own best marketing for your club, right? It's not someone that joined after their college experience, or someone that's moved in the area. It's like someone that you've drawn through your entire system, a lifer, right? Like what better marketing, what better image can a club have than that person that's been in the system for what 20 years and is an elite athlete, right?
So
Like
Shaggy, as a summary, what you're saying is you want to start a youth club because you're going to produce lifers.
like
Is that what you're saying?
lifers and social players, yeah.
All right, so lifers. And you know what? I agree with the lifers thing. I went to Brookline High School. I knew that we were somehow associated with Boston Men. I could not wait to play for Boston Men. It wasn't even the same club, but because I heard that a lot of Brookline rugby players, when they graduated, they played for Boston Men. I could not wait to play for them, and I played for them, and it was amazing. It was a lot of fun. All right, so lifers. That's the first
Yeah.
one. You produce lifers.
The
What
other
else, guys?
Hold on a second. The other thing that what I heard Shaggy say, and it actually is true. Didn't have it high on my list, but is that you do get other players playing for your club, whether they're the parents. I've seen a youth player's parent start rugby, watch their kid play, fall in love with the sport, and then start playing it. It happens, right? And so basically, what I heard Shaggy saying, if I'm not mistaken, is that you're actually growing your player base, right? Maybe you're not going to get the best players, but you're growing your club by just being, exposing a whole family, a whole extended family by virtue of being connected to the one youth player. There's 10 other family members who see the game, maybe older brothers, older sisters, younger brothers, younger sisters, uncles, aunts, parents that see the game, and then you grow your club that way.
Yeah, exactly, Chris.
A great
We
point. So you may not be getting elites, but you're getting social players. You're right. I heard Shaggy say that. All right, throw another bullet.
So I reckon so you asked a question um, more on the lines of why should an adult club do it for themselves, whereas I feel like every adult club should do it for the community, right? Because it's part of that culture, and it's not about myself. It's about giving back to the community. And the only reason they're sitting there in that adult club is because somewhere along their way, they had an opportunity with the youth club or high school, etc., all the way through. So I think it's a responsibility.
Ooh, the R word that I know
Mm.
all young men and young women love, responsibility. You're right. I didn't think about this. Give back to rugby. I
Mhm.
mean, we've all
You know
gotten a
what?
lot, and we're going to get out of rugby. Just give back to the thing that's been such a positive force in your life.
Mhm. We
Yeah,
had
it's interesting. It shows responsibility. What I would say is a buzzword, especially with maybe a younger generation, is outreach, right? So while it is a responsibility, but that's true, and that might be a scary. The R word might be scary, but the word outreach is not scary. That is that is something that people feel, that sort of motivates them to take action. So, but fair enough. That's a really good point. Nimesh. All right, Daryl, I almost interrupted you, or sort of interrupted you.
so we Cape Cod had a parent that reached out to us saying that he wanted to start a youth club for his kids. And then so we naturally reached out to the Cape Cod Men's Club, and he initially thought we were asking him to take on the role of starting a youth club, but his comments were that just like a lot of other people's that I'm the president and coach. I barely have 15 guys who show up to practice. Barely have 15. I barely have 15, 13 guys come to practice. I'm hoping I get 18 guys that come to the games. I don't have a very big club, so I don't have the brainwidth to do it because I'm holding everything together by myself. And in a lot of ways, it's like you're thinking so narrowly as far as how to build your club. You really need to be thinking wider, right? You need to cast a wider net. it would, if you know, so a wider net is having both a men's and a women's club and a youth club. I mean, it's opening your net wider, right? When I did a program with Bill Good, we were doing one at with Boston Parks and Rec, and we were going to use the bubble. And Bill was thinking, I really just want to open this up to middle school girls because we don't have a lot of middle school girls playing rugby in Boston, and that would be a great way to build a high school team. But he only wanted to invite middle school girls. And he wanted to do this because he felt like, not only do I just want to hit that niche audience, but I don't think I have enough coaches to be able to handle, a lot of middle school girls if they showed up. And I said, Bill, I go, the last thing we need to worry about is having too many kids show up. We've never had that problem of having too many kids show up. So in my mind, what really you should do is invite any age grade girl in the city of Boston to come to this thing, kindergarten through 12th grade, right? And if 500 girls show up, we can get coaches. We can get coaches so we have 10 to 1. That will be the easiest problem we got. I go, open up your net wider and get more girls to come in. All right. That's the best way you're going to expose this game. So to me, when a club is thinking that, it's so hard just to handle my 30 players, but we need revenue, we need a better partnership with Parks and Rec. We want to expand our club, get our old boys and old girls back. Really, the best way is you got to expand your reach. Again, I talk about this with advertising. If you're going to an advertiser and you're saying that, yeah, I got 30 guys on my sidelines, we want $10,000 from your company, that's not too exciting if I'm a potential sponsor. But if you tell them you got 200 people on your sidelines because you got a men's side, a women's side, a youth side, an old boy side, now as an advertiser, now that sounds interesting to me. All right, now I'm getting in front of 200 people, not just 30. So casting a wider net to me is always a great reason to help grow your club, expand your club. So it's that idea of maybe thinking bigger, not small. Just thinking large, and hopefully, if you build it big, they will come.
Got it. Okay, so that's another bullet to throw in there. Is, guys, cast a larger net, please. Expand your reach because from a marketing perspective, you're going to get more share. You're going to get more clout. So if you're just thinking about it from a marketing perspective and being able to present yourself, that's going to make you a lot more marketable. Awesome. Got it. That's 4. Anything else?
Well, culture, Daniel. I probably said it just a moment ago, so I don't really maybe need to iterate it again. But if you feel it, if you look at the best clubs in the world, those old clubs in the UK or any club in Australia, New Zealand. Um, the culture that they build by having multiple tiers of programs. And once I'm starting to feel it, it was like, wow, this is a really good feeling. This is a big family, and when they were there for each other, and when people, yeah, all right, I already said it earlier, and I'm gonna leave it at that. Simple and concise: culture, community, family.
Culture, community, family. Fantastic. Okay, I've got anybody else? More bullet items we can throw in there? I couldn't hear you.
She's still on mute, but I don't think she's got anything. But one, we
I
didn't.
got one. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Yep. Go ahead.
You go. You go. You haven't
Okay,
even
I
had
got
a
a couple
chance to
more.
go yet.
I got a couple more. If you're having a hard time being able to secure field space, and perhaps not guaranteeing it, if you want to find a way of being able to make it easier on you to open up more fields, because some fields are literally just blocked off for organizations that are for youth. So it's going to open more doors with more towns as far as being able to even think about being able to have access to field and perhaps even make it a little bit cheaper. So I think field, and we talk about this over and over again, field space is a huge choke point. So fields, having a problem with fields, you know what? Here's a selling point. Start a youth rugby club. You're going to get all these other fantastic things: lifers, social players, giving back to the community because it's your responsibility. Cast a larger net, build a stronger, more robust community, more of a net, and fields. It's going to help you with the number one problem most rugby clubs have. Anything else?
Well, yeah, Daniel, your epiphany. First, you talk about your epiphany. Your mind was blown a half hour ago, but the elephant in the room is recruiting, right? And so, actually, what I'm surprised to hear tonight is that we didn't talk about. We haven't talked much about the reason why you want to build a youth program is so that those youth rugby players come up to play for your club. Because that's too long-term thinking, or there's too much attrition. So actually, that didn't come up as a big deal.
Yeah,
But so
and or parents that are part of the youth program, as you said, going into the senior clubs and playing while their kids are playing in the youth.
right. Yeah, right. What the other one though is if you continue to grow your brand and you grow a bigger organization and by growing a youth club, you go from 20 members or 20 families for that matter. Actually not even families because they're 20 somethings. They haven't even started families yet. Instead of having 20 20 something year olds or 30 something 20 something year olds, suddenly if you can build a youth program, you have 100 families involved in your community, and you have a bigger brand. The hardest thing for a men's club, if they want to be more and more competitive, is how do you get kids that are coming out of college to come play for your team, or instead of going to play for Boston or Boston Irish or Mystic, why are you going to come and play for why are you going to come play for Cape Cod, right? And so, and the answer might be in that, well, this is the club that has the broadest base. This is the club that has the broadest resources. It has jobs if you don't have a job, and that sort of thing. So maybe maybe you're not recruiting the actual player, but you're just sort of creating. You're saying like, hey, we're the biggest club in the state. You should come play with us, even though a lot of clubs are kids. So that might be something. I was thinking through as we were talking today, and I sort of changed my mind that you're not. It's the focus is not what I thought it was at the beginning of this conversation, which was that you're going to collect these athletes that you built in the youth program. It's really that if you build it, you'll be you could be the biggest club or one of the biggest clubs in the state. Okay, that was new to me, or like my epiphany of the day. But Daniel, your epiphany, your mind was blown. The old boys one.
Yeah, exactly. And it builds right off of what Daryl was talking about. And that is um, being able to pull in the old boys who bleed your team colors and are just, they don't know how they can participate with you anymore. And they don't know if, how they can give you money anymore. Start a youth rugby club so that you can harvest in these old, these players that are not part of your club anymore to coach or participate or help coach for the youth club. So it's a double whammy. It's double dipping. You're going to be able to start a rugby club and have youth players, and then you're also going to be able to harvest in and bring in the old boys who are no longer 21, 23, 25 that are hoping that they have enough money by the end of the month to pay for rent because it all went to beer, right? That they actually have a little bit of discretionary money left at the end of the month that, who knows, perhaps they could drop a little bit more into the tip jar for your club. Blew my mind. It's a double whammy there. That's a pretty amazing one. Chris, thank you so much for setting that up. It really, I was like, wow, I that's amazing. It's a double whammy there. Anything else aside from the fact that maybe you get more money? You no longer have just, the 20, 30 players in your club, but now you're adding another 20 to 60 youth players, which will bring more money into your coffers. Now, it's more to think about. It's more expenses because now you need to worry about being able to provide for vastly different needs, but you're bringing up your membership up significantly if you're running a good youth club. Anything else, guys?
You're a
Well,
genius.
it's getting late, but I would probably expand on that. I've said it in other podcasts. My kids are involved in a lot of youth sports. We spend a fortune on youth sports. We do not spend a fortune on rugby, right? There is like there is an opportunity, to make money, and that's just not what we're in it for, right? So, but the opportunity is there, and I hope we don't. I think that's for the academies. I don't really think it's for our rec programs. We want to grow the game and give back to the community. We're not a profit center, but the opportunity is there.
Yeah, and
Absolutely.
along with that, I just put in, with obviously with a larger club, you do have the economy of scale, to which, even if it's not on a profit basis, that allows clubs to, produce more swag, right, for everyone. So you can have whereas an adult only focused club, will only have adult T-shirts. With a fully fleshed out club, you'll have swag for the whole family that can just easily go out and that can be justified, right? So
Yeah, yeah, it's a good point.
That
Well,
rounds us out to 10 excellent bullet points. And Shaggy comes, I was like, oh, we only got 9 bullet points. If we can get one more. And Shaggy, that was fantastic. You're absolutely right. You've already paid for the design, right? Why print it just for, adult men's, adult women's? Now you could add another however many for youth. And hey, the parents might also want to buy more t-shirts or to get warm ups or whatever.
they
Shaggy,
do.
I
Like,
love you, man. That's fantastic. I love it. All right.
swag is powerful.
Swag is really powerful. Again, get yourself a really great, design or something. We talked about earlier on. If you have a great little moniker, then it's a lot easier to sell. All right, folks, we're we're 2 hours into this. Do we have any more to talk about in this topic, or we want to think about wrapping it up? Wrapping it up, wrapping it up. All right, guys. Let's just go around the horn. If you have a shout out, a mention, something to say, go ahead and do it. This is not required in any way whatsoever. I don't want anybody to freak out. It's just sort of you know, a salutation on the way out. And sorry, Chris, you're usually at the very top. So, Chris, do you have anything?
Oh, I'm so ready today. I actually have a few. I alluded to it earlier, but first, I got so many. One, thanks to Craig Weeks for starting us to do this over video. This has been really fun. Those of you who are listening that can't see us don't realize some of the fun we're having with the camera. Maybe it might come out as some of the shenanigans through the podcast, but really a lot of fun going on there. We can see each other now, and this is the first time doing it. Craig, we couldn't have done it without you. So thanks for that, even though he couldn't join us. Two, another shout out to you, Daryl, for teaching me the word brain width. I never heard that before, and it's automatically back in my lexicon.
Exactly.
I am going to use that one.
I
That's
am too.
brilliant,
I
and I'm
noticed that.
and I'm sorry for
Very.
calling you old and washed up, Daryl. Right? I just haven't seen you play.
You've always been washed up.
Put me in, coach.
You better
Hey,
not be.
right. Hey, the older we get, the better we were. All right, Chris. Thank you.
Wait, hold on, one
Oh, you
more.
got more.
I
Go
just
ahead,
only
please.
no, only because I promised earlier, and I do this at most podcasts. Like, just keeping an eye on USA Rugby. They did a really good job. They're very communicative this week. Actually, I thought they were going to chapter 11. I thought that they would be radio silent. They're really active. And if you go to the website, they actually have a digest of all the activities that they got going on this week. So most weeks I kind of chime in and say, "Hey, USA Rugby's doing this, and they're doing these chats or these doing these workout routines to maybe raise some money for charity." This week they released a digest saying, like, here's how you can connect with the Eagles or USA Rugby on Tuesday and on Wednesday and on Thursday and Friday. So go to the website and check it out if you're interested. Really good job. I'm really sort of happy with USA Rugby during these times of turmoil. They found a way to be more, quite engaged with the community, and never has it been as more organized than it has been this week. So kudos, USA Rugby.
More organized doing the reorganization.
Yeah, somebody's doing something right.
Mm.
That's it. That's it. I'm done.
I'm going to do a quick shout out to Brad for jumping in. Obviously, he tried to start a club back in the start of spring, and that wasn't going to happen this year. But they're still fully committed, and we look forward to seeing them next year. So great to grow the family here, and also to Skylar. It's awesome to see you back on again. Like that's fantastic. Would love to see you encourage a couple more of your mates or friends to jump on too. It's good to have some youth involvement here. That's it.
Fantastic. All right, so I'm gonna do the required, but not just required, but because it's so significant. And I've been having a lot of fun with you guys, and I'll be honest, I just remembered, and it's the quiet things that mean a lot in your life that you don't always remember because they you know they don't make such a big fuss about it. Or 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 I would just shut up and I want to mention it. Mother's Day. So I think all of us, and especially me, in the situation that we're in, COVID and at home, a huge shout out and thanks to my wife for being able to be such a rock that helps, keep the house and family sane. Mother's Day just happened and it was amazing. We had a lot of fun, and she made it a lot of fun, even though we were supposed to be celebrating her. So shout out to my wife. Uh, okay, I'm done.
All right, so I'm gonna give a shout out to all of the teachers out there. This is a lot of work they have to do. And there's two versions of teachers. So there's your traditional classroom teachers that are that had little or no warning to create online content for their students,
Yep.
and that was something really astronomical to have to come up with. Um, and I was talking to one of my teachers. I substituted in Boston and Needham Public Schools, and one of my teacher colleagues was a little bummed because she had seen on Facebook where a lot of people were saying that we're paying these teachers full time and a lot of them are just sitting on their butts at home, and she felt really bad about that, and but I just reminded her that that's not the case. You're always going to have some people that are real negative about things like that, and I know how hard they are working to try to make sure that their students are learning and advancing. They take that stuff personally. And then the other part of it is parents who went from maybe being a full-time whatever it was to now having to become a teacher, and not realizing how difficult that is. I mean, it's hard enough just teaching, but trying to teach your own kids is even harder.
Oh yeah.
It takes a lot of work. And so some shout outs to our traditional teachers and our teachers who could probably use some emergency pay as well. So
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
unique that Skylar is being homeschooled because as a teacher myself, someone who has a teacher's license, I can't imagine, and I have two children that are older. I cannot imagine teaching my kids at home. I can't teach them anything. So if I had to have my kids at home with me all day, every day, I would. That would be really tough. So I think that's really incredible, and it's an awesome experience. So, yeah, that's pretty neat.
Yeah, the internet is our friend.
Yeah.
Oh my god. I can't imagine how you guys been doing this. I am not a teacher. Man. So yeah, I'm just gonna shout out to to all our essential workers out there, nurses, grocery workers, gas station attendants, everyone that's out there, having to endure face-to-face contact, having to not live by the recommended health procedures that everyone else is having to abide by. They're out there doing the work, and along with that also all the kids, all the rugby kids out there, are bummed out about not being able to start, not having any structured sport. Shout out to everyone that's hanging in. It's tough, and we're gonna get through this.
Very, very cool. Skylar, what do you got, kid?
I'm gonna stand up.
I'm gonna say shout out to the New Zealand Rugby Union for telling me there's gonna be rugby again in the near future because I'm running out of logos to draw.
That's excellent. Here, here. Also very excited to hear that. All right, I think that brings us to the end of the show. So, unless there's anything else, really just want to give a huge high five to everybody that was involved in this. Huge five to anybody that's listening that's going to be able to take what we're doing here and benefit from it and build out from it. Join the Discord, get on YouTube, get engaged, get involved, and start a youth rugby club. All right, everybody, let's go ahead and end the stream.